Okay, private jokes. Good morning. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our press conference today. On Monday, the council will kick off our hearings for the mayor's fiscal year 2025 preliminary budget. I encourage all New Yorkers to tune in and share their thoughts about the city's budget. Last week, we were indeed relieved that Mayor Adams announced that the PEGs originally planned for the executive budget in April will be canceled, sparing city agencies from further cuts that they cannot afford. Still, there are proposed cuts that remain and should be reversed. The mayor's announced lifting of a citywide hiring freeze must be followed by the administration addressing the persistence of understaffing within key city agencies, which are critical to helping them fulfill their obligation to deliver services to New Yorkers. The council has been steadfast that many of these blunt cuts were never necessary in the first place. Rather than making indiscriminate cuts, it's important that our city takes a better approach that protects and prioritizes essential services that New Yorkers rely on to be healthy and safe. The council looks forward to hearing directly from the city agencies and members of the public throughout our preliminary budget hearings next month as we continue our work to ensure a city budget that delivers for all New Yorkers. Before we continue, I do want to acknowledge that we are joined today by Professor Juan Manuel Benitez and his class of students from the Columbia Journalism School. Welcome to the Red Room, students and Professor. We look forward to seeing you one day in room 9. Now let's move on to our stated agenda. First, we'll vote on the following finance items. A preconsidered resolution sponsored by Councilmember Justin Brannan authorizing a 40-year Article 11 tax exemption for new construction of a 7-story rent-stabilized building in Councilmember Sanchez's district. A preconsidered resolution sponsored by Councilmember Justin Brannan amending a previously approved Article 5 tax exemption in Councilmember Abreu's district. The amendment makes necessary technical changes. Today, we'll also vote on a set of bills sponsored by Councilmember Julie Menin related to mobile vending requirements. These bills emerged from recommendations made by the Street Vendor Advisory Board, which was established by Local Law 18 of 2021 and consists of various stakeholders, including vendor advocates and brick-and-mortar business representatives. Together, this package of bills will streamline vending regulations while also ensuring that vending does not occur in bike lanes. Introduction 49A would allow mobile food vendors to display or store goods on top of their carts, and it would simplify the display requirements for general vendors. Additionally, this bill would repeal the city's bookkeeping requirements for general vendors and mobile food vendors. Introduction 50A would eliminate the requirement for individual employees of mobile food vending carts or trucks to each have a New York State certificate of sales tax authority. This bill would also eliminate the requirement that mobile food vendors and general vendors obtain a tax clearance certificate upon renewal of a license or permit. And Introduction 51A would prohibit general vendors and mobile food vendors from vending in bicycle lanes. A bike lane is defined as a portion of the roadway that is marked off or separated for the preferential or exclusive use of bicycles. This bill would clarify that vendors cannot operate or leave their items in bike lanes. I invite Councilmember Menin to the podium to discuss her legislation.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I'm thrilled today that the Council is going to be voting on 3 of my bills that relate to street vending. As the Speaker said, what we're really trying to do is ease the bureaucratic burdens that are plaguing street vendors. In the past 2 years, the Council has put forward and passed so much legislation that helps our small businesses and ease their regulatory burdens. Now the Council is taking action, that same type of action, to help our street vendors. So specifically, as the Speaker mentioned, Intro 49 49 repeals arduous bureaucratic requirements for street vendors, just as we've done, as I said, for small businesses. Intro 50 removes the requirement that all mobile food vendor employees have to obtain a certificate of authority to collect sales tax. We don't require, for example, waiters or bartenders at restaurants to have this kind of certificate, so why should we do that for all employees of street vendors? Instead, now only the owner of the street vending permit will need to apply for that certificate. And then lastly, Intro 51 is a common sense bill that prohibits vending in bike lanes. So I really want to thank the Speaker for her leadership in moving this package forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Menon. Next, we'll vote on two bills sponsored by Councilmember Gail Brewer that aim to increase safety related to the use of lithium-ion batteries and powered mobility devices. Over the past few years, as e-bikes, e-scooters, and powered mobility devices have become more prevalent, the city has experienced a rapid increase in lithium-ion battery-related fires in both residential and commercial properties that have resulted in a dangerous uptick in fatalities. This legislation is part of the council's ongoing efforts to mitigate the dangers of lithium-ion batteries and improve fire safety citywide. Introduction 19A would require all businesses that sell e-bikes, e-scooters, and other personal mobility devices powered by lithium-ion batteries to post informational materials and guides about battery safety, both in their physical stores and on their online retail platforms. A violation would be subject to civil penalties ranging from $150 to $350 per violation. And Introduction 21A would enhance enforcement efforts for the sale and rental of uncertified powered mobility devices, such as e-bikes and e-scooters. This bill would give the fire department enforcement authority for these laws, increase penalties for illegal device sales, and give the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection and the fire department sealing authority for repeat violators. I invite Councilmember Brewer to the podium to give remarks on her legislation.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I do want to say to the wonderful journalism students that just last Friday, one of your former graduates was killed in one of these fires in Harlem. And it's an example of why we are doing this legislation. Thanks to the Speaker and my colleagues, we've had a whole series of bills to try to arrest and stop these I would say, uncertified batteries from being charged and then killing people. 18 people killed last year, 200 fires. This is the 31st blaze caused by lithium-ion batteries this year, and we know what happened in Harlem. So Intro 19, as the Speaker stated, is focused on retailers who must post in their store and online, basically telling people, please don't mix and match. That's what I would call it in terms of the batteries, and if you don't do that, you will be fined. I have to say what we really need is federal legislation, to the credit of Schumer and Gillibrand and Richie Torres to have such legislation, and there is a bipartisan interest in stating that no uncertified batteries would be sold in the United States of America, because as much effort as we put into this, we still have the online issue. And hopefully it will be addressed at some point, but in the interim, we have to do what we can locally. 21A, as the Speaker indicated, would focus on the fact that both the Consumer and Worker Protection and the Fire Department would be working together with shops inspections, because obviously every agency is short on inspectors, and the more eyes on the problem, the better. The shops would have to do a whole listing of keeping track of what they're selling, which most stores do anyway, but they've not been doing. Most importantly, if there are 3 violations found, then there could be what I would call padlocking and or fines. The point is that these stores cannot be selling these uncertified batteries that then get plugged in and cause these fires. So this is hopefully one more opportunity to try to close some of these stores, but I want to emphasize what we really need is federal legislation. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. That concludes our stated agenda, and with that, we will take on topic questions.
So on topic on the bills,
Councilwoman Burr, question on your bill. You go after the stores, but you recognize there's a black market for this, and a lot of chop shops putting these batteries up. Is it fair to Speaker saying to council there's no appetite to have FDNY and NYPD go after the people using these bikes the way they go after people and confiscate unlicensed mopeds? So if you see an e-bike that looks dangerous and is probable cause that it is dangerous, an NYPD or FDNY official can confiscate it right on the spot.
Well, I mean, I am no expert on what I would, if maybe fire department, I don't know if NYPD would know. To be honest with you, some of these batteries that are supposed to, and I think Chair Menon knows this because she's had so much discussion also. The issue is sometimes they have a certified sticker, but guess what? It's not a legal certified sticker. So I think the challenge to those particular enforcement agents is what exactly is an uncertified battery. So I do think that the shops are the right way to go. We're also very conscious of making sure that the delivery folks are able to deliver to the credit of the agencies and the city council. They have more funding in terms of their salaries. So it's a delicate balance to have them work. They need 3 batteries a day in order to do their job. I could go on and on about some of the startups that are trying to do vending machines. So you could put in a used battery and take out a literally certified battery that is not one that has a fake sticker on it. So I think the idea is we need to come up with innovators like Pop Wheels, which I just described, and closing down some of these shops.
And just a follow-up to the speaker, what about, I know there was a bill pending that would regulate e-bikes, require licensure. What's the status on that? Is the council interested in taking up requiring e-bikes to be licensed the way you would, say, a moped?
Well, once again, as with all legislation, that piece of legislation is going through the process right now. As Councilmember Brewer said, the council is extremely concerned with the legality of these batteries. We want to make sure that the city is as safe as possible. So pending legislation is still pending legislation and going through the wheels as we continue to review.
Other on topic?
Talking about the e-batteries, is any legislation coming up about the people who is selling used e-batteries? Because that's the beginning of the problem. They sell the used e-batteries, or the stores just manage to change it and resell it. So right now, the stores that change it right now are, they have penalties. But what about the people who are selling used batteries?
Thanks to the Speaker and the City Council, we've already passed such legislation. Councilmember Felice passed legislation, has to be certified. I passed legislation saying you can't sell a refurbished battery with, they switch the cells between one battery and another. The issue, what we're doing today, is not only just going after the battery, but trying to go after the stores that are selling the batteries. It's a challenge, but we've already accomplished what you just described. To be honest with you, as somebody said, there's an illegal market and then there's an online market.
One more on topic?
So I just want to ask one more question about the e-bike batteries. And I know last year in June, there was that awful fire in Chinatown, the e-bike store on the first floor and then the apartments above, and 4 people died. And so I'm wondering if there's any thought about why we allow these stores to be located in these old combustible buildings. That fire, obviously they explode, the fire quickly raced upstairs. I know you have the 3 strikes rule you're talking about, but why allow that to begin with, or to allow these stores to be in these combustible buildings?
I think that's a larger conversation that, perhaps we would take a look at as far as, allowing somebody to sell in a particular area. That's a larger conversation, perhaps something that we can begin to discuss. Thank you for that.
Don't get me started about smoke shops. You want to have that conversation?
On topic? Or-
They're all illegal.
Okay, done on topic? All right, we'll do off topic. Let's start with Jeff.
Speaker, they're having a ceasefire demonstration outside.
Yeah.
Cities across the country have introduced resolutions calling for a ceasefire. We just saw Jerry Nadler, Dan Golden as well call for this. I'm wondering if there's been any discussion within the council to bring a resolution to the floor or make a statement, that sort of thing.
Well, thank you for the question, Jeff. I'll just say what I've constantly said since October. We truly mourn all of the lives lost, first and foremost, lives that have been harmed over the last month. Thousands of civilian lives lost, families, communities devastated in Palestine, devastated in Israel on October 7th and beyond. I'm going to reiterate our stance on the need for peace, period. We have to end all of the violence. We just do, in order to protect and preserve lives and allow people throughout the entire region to lead safe and dignified lives. My office has been having conversations with council members who, as you already know, hold a wide range of opinions and feelings. Those who have voiced their desire for the body to support a ceasefire. We are having those conversations within the council. The council's voice is strongest, though, when we're united together as a body. And I know that you know this has been a priority of mine, to work within this body unified as we can possibly be. So those conversations are happening internally. My office has been encouraging and providing space for members with differing opinions to engage in important conversations to help us arrive at a place to express a relatively unified position as an entire body. So the work is ongoing. My hope is for us to come together in recognizing our shared humanity and interests to promote peace and the preservation of life across the region.
Speaker Adams, the top brass at the NYPD yesterday put out a post on social media criticizing the criminal justice system, and they specifically called out a Judge Wright. And then last week, there were a series of critical exchanges between them and a freelance journalist. All these exchanges were then deleted on social media. Speaker, do you have any concern about the rhetoric by the NYPD? Should the mayor be held accountable for their messaging at all?
It's disturbing. I don't think that, well, first of all, I'm not an enthusiast of social media being weaponized in any form or fashion, even though that seems to be the normal practice. It's to me, it's very, very troubling that we would see a city agency, particularly as potent as the NYPD, performing these actions on social media. It's not something that we would encourage our children to do. So I would hope that our responsible agencies, particularly agencies like the NYPD and others, would take a stronger look, at the rhetoric, at the language that they're using, and at the lives that they're affecting, by using social media in this way. I'm out on social media. I don't particularly look at it, but I know that I'm out there as well in the negative light, as well as the positive light, thankfully, as well. And at times things are true, and at a lot of times things are just not true. So I would absolutely caution our responsible agencies to just be very, very careful about the lives that they impact with what they say and how they use social media.
Just a couple more off topic.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Spellman sister.
Spellman sister. I wasn't going to say it.
I'm going to say it.
Let's talk about, obviously there's been a lot of robust discussion about sanctuary city status. Most recently, Mayor Adams yesterday discussed possibly amending it in a minor way so that those migrants committing repeat offenses in the criminal justice system might be deported. Now, obviously, the city also has legislation and rules in place that it's been decades. The
right.
city does not cooperate with us because we want those immigrants to feel comfortable. But and I know the city council has a very firm position on not changing the sanctuary city status. That said, can you please still weigh in on this, finite issue with regard to some of the more public incidents that we've seen with migrants, like assaulting a police officer and stabbing at a sneaker store? Is there any room for discussion with the city council to amend the sanctuary city law, because we're in a different period of time now than we were when it was put in place?
Well, Darla, thank you for the question. What I will say again is, and you prefaced it perfectly in the beginning of the question in saying that, we are not considering laws changes to laws. These laws have been in effect for decades. We believe in them. We also feel that public safety, of course, is of utmost importance. But when we start refuting back to times where migrants, immigrants feel threatened because of status, we have known, in my own district in Queens over the over 6 years that I've been in office, people are fearful of even giving their names or their addresses. These are innocent people who are fearful of partaking in community activity because of their status in this country. So to me, we don't just have one ball of wax. We have an entire picture of a scenario, of a situation. And if the council were to change things, it would impact more people, I believe, negatively than a small fraction of what we are looking at right now as far as this scenario is concerned. So we're going to continue to believe in due process for all folks. We're going to continue to, of course, have conversations around it because I think that, it's always positive to have conversations and to listen, to all sides. But I do believe in due process, and I believe in due process for everyone.
Just a quick follow-up, what is the path forward? Obviously, everyone has a vested public interest, right? So this is not malicious on the mayor's side or the city council side. There's a vested public interest from all parties involved. So what could be a path forward when, New Yorkers see some of these things happening, like you said, there's a smaller fraction of migrants who are committing these crimes and offenses than the larger picture, but what's a path forward? Where do we look for solutions?
I think that the way that we look for solutions right now is that we still have a responsibility. We have a responsibility as a sanctuary city to make sure that everyone is protected. I'm going to go in the place where people aren't really talking about, and that is the provision of work. I firmly believe that if we were to have the provision of work, that's going to take a lot of the idle time away from folks that, quite frankly, have nothing else to do. People are penned up in HERCs, in other places, in respite centers, whatever we want to call them, these places with different policies with nothing to do except expand on the human experience. See? Idle time, exactly, Darla. So for me, it's going to be the work status, and how do we get these folks that are getting off these buses, getting off these trains and planes and saying, all I want to do is work. That's all. I've seen it for myself. A lot of you in this room have seen it yourselves. Folks getting off the buses and saying, where do I go? I'm going to pick up a bottle. I'm going to pick up a can. That's not enough. We need for the work status to come. We need for it to come quickly. And I'm going to, once again, as the mayor has done, I am going to beseech our federal partners to not just hold New York responsible for housing migrants, but to do their part in giving us what we need to ensure that everybody gets a fair share in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker, just to follow up on that last question, what the mayor proposed the other day was effectively repealing the 2014 strengthening of the sanctuary status laws. I understand you're saying the council has not considered that, but can you just go into a little bit why you think specifically repealing that would be a bad idea and what the consequences of that would be? On a separate note, with the preliminary budget hearing starting next week, are the top priorities for the council still to reverse some of those November pegs, such as the ones that resulted in Sunday library closures, or has the top priority focus shifted in any direction, if so?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. To go back to, as far as repealing any part of the law, any part of the sanctuary city law, I'm going to stand on what I just said in the fact that these laws have been in effect for decades, and we need to lean into the way that, once again, prevention of this behavior. How can we prevent the behavior? I think that it would be harmful to retract and go back, and to go backwards instead of going forwards as far as the law is concerned. As far as the budget is concerned, though, what I will say, and I think you just said it, we are going to take a look at everything, but we are very, very concerned with the pegs. We're concerned with the gaps in our agencies not being able to fulfill what they are supposed to be fulfilling for all New Yorkers. And I've shared this for a couple of days. The number one constituent complaint in my own district has been the lack of being able to access SNAP, EBT cards. What are we doing if we can't, give our citizens what they deserve and what they need to survive? Food. So, yeah, we're going back to the table. We're going back to prioritize those things that should have never been taken away from New Yorkers in the first place. We're going back to taking a look at specifically, once again, why there are so many gaps in our city agencies. The hiring freeze, the lifting of the hiring freeze is going to help, but we need for those gaps to be filled. We need for those spaces to be filled immediately. But, yeah, we're going back to the table with all of that. Thank you.
I have a question. Thank you for waiting. This is on the theme of transparency. Your administration and the council's been focused on transparency
Yeah.
with the NYPD. My colleague Todd Mizell has been a bit of a crusade concerned about the encryption of police communications. And there's a concern about that transparency will slip. And on a similar vein, Mayor Adams is now, I guess, once again rebuffed Congressman Nadler and Goldman requesting 9/11 World Trade Center files be released so that civil servants and essential workers can get some understanding of what the city knew and when they knew it about the stuff that the EPA was backing up the Aerosafe brief, which a subsequent Inspector General report found was entirely false. So those are two transparency questions: encryption and the 9/11 files. Should they be released?
Thank you, Bob. And it's good to see you back in the Red Room, by the way. I'm going to answer both of your questions with the same response because they both deal with transparency, something that is very near and dear to this council's heart, as you well know. I think that there is a problem, and it is problematic whenever we don't have the transparency that people need and deserve. We can only get better by being held accountable to the work that we're doing. So by holding back that information, we can't improve ourselves. We don't have a report card to give back and say, okay, this is what we're doing as a body, as an agency, as an administration. We don't have that check and balance anymore when there isn't something held up to us and say, okay, this is what you've done, this is what you're accountable to do, how are you going to fix it? I want to know, I want to hear when our body is not living up to what we do. We're going to have differences of opinions, that's one thing, but it's something else to say that, yes, the information is here, but we're not giving you the information. That's a check and balance on our work. So I feel the same way as far as the administration's work is considered, as far as every city agency's work is considered. There has to be a check and balance. There has to be transparency. That's the only way that we're going to get our jobs right for everybody involved.
Concerned about encrypting the police communications, and you would like to see the release of that file?
I am concerned with the lack of transparency on all accounts. Thank you.
The student murder in Georgia, that it was alleged murder by a asylum seeker, previously was arrested in New York.
In Queens, can you talk about the trade-offs of when you don't honor ICE detainers until there's a warrant signed by a federal judge? That there is a trade-off when migrants or immigrants are victims of crimes.